The morning sunlight streamed through the bridal suite windows as Emma Rodriguez carefully lifted her grandmother's vintage wedding dress from its protective garment bag, never imagining that in less than 4 hours, her own sister would destroy the one thing that connected her to 3 generations of family love, turning what should have been the most beautiful day of her life into a devastating nightmare that would test every bond she thought was unbreakable. But sometimes, when betrayal cuts deepest from those we trust most, the universe has its own way of restoring balance and teaching lessons that change everything forever. Hi, beautiful souls. I'm Tina, and I need you to get comfortable with me today, because the story I'm about to share will take you on an emotional roller coaster that might just change how you see family loyalty, sibling rivalry, and the incredible power of karma when it decides to intervene. Emma's experience reveals something profound about human nature, jealousy, and how sometimes the people closest to us can become our greatest enemies when their own insecurities take control. If you've ever dealt with family betrayal, sibling jealousy, or felt like someone you loved deliberately tried to sabotage your happiness, this story will hit you right in the heart. I promise you'll want to hear every single detail of how karma delivered the most perfect justice you could imagine. So please hit that like button to let me know you're here with me. And consider subscribing, because I bring you real stories about real people navigating life's most challenging and transformative moments. Trust me, what happens to Emma's sister at the end will leave you speechless. Now let me tell you about Emma and how one act of sibling cruelty led to the most unexpected and satisfying consequences. Emma had been planning her wedding to David Martinez for 18 months. Carefully organizing every detail to create the perfect celebration that would honor both their Mexican-American heritage and their dreams for the future together. As a 28-year-old elementary school teacher who had worked extra tutoring jobs for 3 years to save money for this day, Emma had poured her heart and soul into making sure everything would be meaningful, beautiful, and memorable for all the right reasons. The vintage lace wedding dress she planned to wear had been passed down through her family for generations, worn first by her great-grandmother Maria in 1943, then by her grandmother Isabella in 1965, and finally by her mother Carmen in 1989, creating a beautiful tradition that connected Emma to the strong women who had come before her and shaped her understanding of love, commitment, and family values. The dress itself was a masterpiece of delicate craftsmanship with intricate beadwork along the bodice, flowing sleeves that had been carefully preserved through decades of storage, and a train that created an elegant silhouette when worn by someone with Emma's petite frame and graceful posture. Emma's mother had spent weeks carefully cleaning and altering the dress to fit perfectly, adding small touches that personalized it for Emma while maintaining the classic beauty that had made it special for 3 previous brides. The emotional significance of wearing this dress went far beyond its physical beauty, representing Emma's connection to her family history, her respect for the women who had worn it before her, and her hope that someday her own daughter might continue the tradition by walking down the aisle in the same precious garment. Emma's relationship with her younger sister Sophia had always been complicated, marked by an undercurrent of competition and resentment that had started in childhood and intensified as they grew older and their different personalities and life choices became more apparent. Sophia, now 25 years old, worked as a social media influencer and had built a successful online presence around fashion, lifestyle, and beauty content. But she had always struggled with feeling overshadowed by Emma's academic achievements, stable relationship, and the respect she commanded from their extended family and community. While Emma had focused on building a career in education and maintaining a long-term relationship with David, Sophia had gone through a series of dramatic relationships and career changes that often left her feeling unstable and searching for validation from external sources. The tension between the sisters had escalated significantly during Emma's engagement period, as Sophia watched their parents, grandparents, and extended family members shower Emma with attention, gifts, and excitement about the upcoming wedding. Sophia had always been the more outgoing and attention-seeking sister, someone who thrived on being the center of social situations and receiving praise for her appearance and personality. So watching Emma become the focus of family celebrations and planning sessions triggered deep-seated insecurities about her own worth and place within the family structure. During family dinners and wedding planning meetings, Sophia would make subtle comments about Emma's choices, question whether David was really the right person for her, and suggest that maybe Emma was rushing into marriage because she was afraid of being alone. Emma had tried repeatedly to include Sophia in the wedding planning process, asking her to be the maid of honor and involving her in decisions about flowers, music, and reception details, but Sophia's participation had been marked by constant criticism, suggestions that Emma's ideas were boring or traditional, and attempts to redirect attention back to herself and her own preferences. When Emma showed Sophia the vintage dress and explained its family significance, Sophia had made dismissive comments about how old-fashioned it looked, how it would photograph poorly for social media, and how Emma should consider wearing something more modern and stylish that would make a better impression on the wedding guests. These comments had hurt Emma deeply, but she had attributed them to Sophia's different aesthetic preferences rather than recognizing them as signs of deeper resentment and jealousy. The week before the wedding, Sophia's behavior had become increasingly erratic and passive-aggressive as she missed scheduled dress fittings, showed up late to the rehearsal dinner, and made comments to other family members about how stressful and overwhelming the wedding preparations had become. Emma had noticed that Sophia seemed particularly fixated on the dress, asking multiple times where it was being stored, whether it was properly protected, and making suggestions about how it should be transported to the church on the wedding day. At the time, Emma had interpreted these questions as Sophia trying to be helpful and involved, never imagining that her sister was actually gathering information that she would use to carry out an act of betrayal so devastating that it would change their relationship forever. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, with the kind of perfect weather that seemed to promise a day filled with joy, celebration, and the beginning of a beautiful new chapter in Emma's life with David. Emma woke up early in the bridal suite at the historic hotel where she and her wedding party were staying, feeling a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and overwhelming gratitude for all the love and support that had brought her to this moment. The vintage dress hung carefully on a padded hanger near the window, where the morning light illuminated the intricate beadwork and delicate lace details that had been lovingly preserved through 3 generations of family brides. Emma spent several quiet minutes alone with the dress, thinking about her great-grandmother Maria, who had sewn many of the intricate details by hand during wartime rationing, and feeling a deep connection to the legacy of strong, loving women who had worn this dress before her. The morning routine proceeded smoothly as Emma's mother Carmen arrived with the hairstylist and makeup artist, followed by her bridesmaids and several family members who wanted to be part of the getting ready process. Sophia had been assigned the important role of helping Emma into the dress and managing the delicate beadwork and buttons that required careful handling, a responsibility that Emma had entrusted to her sister as a gesture of love and inclusion despite their recent tensions. The atmosphere in the bridal suite was warm and celebratory, with soft music playing in the background, champagne being shared among the adults, and excited chatter about the ceremony and reception that lay ahead. Emma noticed that Sophia seemed unusually quiet and distracted during the morning preparations, spending long periods checking her phone and stepping out of the room for private conversations that she claimed were work-related but seemed to create additional stress and anxiety. When Emma asked if everything was okay, Sophia assured her that she was just tired from the previous night's rehearsal dinner and was dealing with some minor social media drama that required her attention, but that she was excited about the wedding and ready to fulfill her maid of honor duties. Emma accepted this explanation, not wanting to create additional stress on her wedding day, and trusting that Sophia would set aside whatever was bothering her to focus on the celebration. As the time approached for Emma to put on the dress, the other bridesmaids and family members gathered around to witness this special moment and take photos that would capture the continuation of a beautiful family tradition. Emma's mother carefully removed the dress from its hanger and spread it out on the bed, checking each delicate detail to ensure that everything was perfect and ready for Emma to wear. The room fell quiet with reverence and emotion as everyone present understood the significance of this moment, not just for Emma personally, but for the entire family history that the dress represented and the future generations who might someday continue the tradition. Sophia volunteered to help Emma step into the dress first, positioning herself behind her sister and carefully lifting the delicate fabric over Emma's head, while others guided her arms through the vintage sleeves. Emma felt a moment of pure joy and connection as the dress settled around her body, feeling the weight of history and love that it carried, while also experiencing the excitement of making it her own for this special day. Her mother began working on the intricate button closure that ran up the back of the dress, each button requiring careful attention to ensure that the vintage fabric wasn't stressed or damaged during the process. But as Emma stood there surrounded by love and anticipation, Sophia suddenly stumbled backward, claiming that she had lost her balance, and in the process grabbed at the dress to steady herself. The sound that followed was unmistakable and horrifying, a long, devastating rip that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent room as everyone realized that something terrible had just happened to the precious family heirloom that had survived decades of careful preservation. Emma felt the dress tear away from her body and heard her mother's gasp of shock and disbelief as they all saw the extensive damage that Sophia's apparent accident had caused to the irreplaceable garment. The tear ran from the mid-back section of the dress down through the delicate skirt, destroying intricate beadwork that had taken Emma's great-grandmother months to complete by hand, and ruining lace panels that had been carefully maintained for over 70 years. Emma stood frozen in shock, unable to process what had just happened or understand how such a devastating accident could occur at the worst possible moment, while her mother immediately knelt down to assess the damage and determine whether any emergency repairs might be possible. The other bridesmaids and family members gathered around in stunned silence, everyone understanding that they were witnessing the destruction of something irreplaceable and deeply meaningful to the entire family. Sophia's reaction to the disaster was what first made Emma suspect that something more deliberate had occurred than a simple accident. Instead of showing the devastation and remorse that would be expected from someone who had accidentally destroyed a family heirloom, Sophia seemed almost relieved, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders rather than a terrible mistake having been made. Her apologies sounded forced and insincere, focusing more on how the accident wasn't her fault than on the magnitude of what had been lost. And she seemed more concerned with documenting the drama on her phone than with finding solutions or offering genuine support to her devastated sister. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone you trusted completely betrayed that trust in the most devastating way possible? Have you felt the shock of realizing that someone you loved had deliberately hurt you while pretending it was an accident? The pain in that bridal suite was unlike anything Emma had ever experienced, not just because of the dress itself, but because of the growing realization that her own sister might have destroyed the most precious family heirloom intentionally. On the most important day of Emma's life, in front of everyone who mattered most to their family, Emma's mother, Carmen, immediately took control of the crisis situation. Her decades of experience as a seamstress and her deep understanding of the dress's construction, allowing her to quickly assess what might be salvageable from the devastating damage that Sophia had caused. With only 2 hours remaining before the ceremony, Carmen called her longtime friend and fellow seamstress, Maria Santos, explaining the emergency and begging for immediate assistance with what seemed like an impossible repair job. The two women worked frantically with needle and thread, using spare fabric from Carmen's sewing box and employing every technique they had learned over decades of alterations and repairs. But the extent of the damage made it clear that the dress could never be fully restored to its original beauty. While her mother worked desperately to create some kind of wearable solution, Emma sat in shocked silence, still processing the magnitude of what had happened, and trying to understand how her wedding day had transformed from a perfect celebration into a nightmare of family betrayal and irreplaceable loss. The other bridesmaids and family members attempted to offer comfort and suggestions, with some proposing that Emma wear one of the backup dresses that had been considered during the planning process, while others suggested that the damaged dress could still be worn with creative styling that might disguise the worst of the tears and missing beadwork. Sophia, meanwhile, had positioned herself in the corner of the room where she continued to document the drama on her phone, taking photos and videos that she claimed were for family memories, but that seemed more focused on capturing Emma's distress and the chaos that her actions had created. When Emma's cousin asked Sophia to put her phone away and help with the repair efforts, Sophia responded defensively, claiming that she was too upset about the accident to be useful and that her presence was only making everyone more stressed. Her behavior during this crisis revealed a callousness and self-centeredness that shocked even family members who had grown accustomed to Sophia's dramatic tendencies and attention-seeking behavior. As the desperate repair efforts continued, Emma began to notice details about Sophia's behavior that strongly suggested the destruction of the dress had been intentional rather than accidental. Sophia had been wearing flat, stable shoes during the morning preparations, making a sudden loss of balance unlikely, and several family members commented that Sophia had seemed to deliberately position herself in a way that would require her to grab the dress if she stumbled. Most telling of all was Sophia's complete lack of emotional response to the destruction of a family heirloom that should have devastated anyone who understood its significance and value to their shared heritage. The breakthrough in understanding Sophia's true motives came when Emma's youngest cousin discovered that Sophia had been live streaming parts of the morning preparation on her social media accounts, including the moment of the dress destruction, with captions that suggested she was documenting a family drama for her followers' entertainment. The discovery that Sophia had been treating Emma's wedding day as content for her online presence, potentially planning to profit from the drama and devastation she had caused, revealed a level of betrayal that went far beyond sibling rivalry or jealousy. Sophia had not only destroyed the dress, but had also violated the privacy and dignity of Emma's most intimate family moments for the sake of social media engagement. When confronted with the evidence of her live streaming and the suspicious circumstances of the accident, Sophia initially denied any intentional wrongdoing, claiming that she had been documenting the morning for innocent family memories and that the streaming had been activated accidentally. But under pressure from multiple family members who had witnessed her strange behavior and obvious lack of remorse, Sophia eventually broke down and admitted that she had been planning to sabotage the dress because she couldn't stand watching Emma receive all the attention and admiration that came with wearing such a special family heirloom. Sophia's confession revealed years of accumulated resentment and jealousy that had been building as she watched Emma achieve traditional milestones of success and stability, while Sophia struggled with her own sense of direction and purpose. She admitted that she had researched the dress's construction and identified its most vulnerable points, planning her sabotage carefully to ensure maximum damage while maintaining plausible deniability about her intentions. The revelation that Sophia had spent weeks planning this betrayal, studying the dress, and waiting for the perfect moment to destroy it, devastated Emma even more than the loss of the garment itself. Emma's immediate family members reacted with shock and fury to Sophia's confession, with several relatives demanding that Sophia be immediately removed from the wedding party and banned from attending the ceremony altogether. Emma's father, who had remained calm throughout most family conflicts over the years, was particularly angry about Sophia's deliberate destruction of his mother's wedding dress and her betrayal of the trust that the family had placed in her as maid of honor. The room erupted in heated arguments as family members expressed their outrage and disbelief, while Sophia continued to defend her actions by claiming that Emma had always been the favored daughter and that the dress represented everything that was wrong with the family's treatment of the two sisters. But even as the family drama reached its peak intensity, Emma made a decision that surprised everyone present and demonstrated the strength of character that had made her such a beloved teacher and friend to so many people throughout her life. Instead of allowing Sophia's betrayal to ruin her wedding day completely, Emma chose to focus on what truly mattered about the ceremony and the commitment she was making to David, rather than on the material objects or family traditions that had been destroyed by her sister's jealousy and spite. Emma announced that she would wear one of the backup dresses that had been purchased during the planning process, and that the wedding would proceed as scheduled despite the drama and heartbreak that Sophia had caused. Her decision to move forward with grace and dignity, even in the face of such devastating betrayal, inspired the other family members to set aside their anger and focus on supporting Emma through the rest of her wedding day, while also making it clear that Sophia's behavior would have serious consequences for her relationships with the extended family. The transformation of Emma from devastated victim to empowered bride happened gradually, as she made the conscious choice to reclaim her wedding day from her sister's sabotage, drawing on inner reserves of strength that she hadn't known she possessed until this moment of crisis tested everything she believed about family, forgiveness, and personal resilience. With the help of her mother and Maria Santos, Emma was fitted into the backup dress that had been purchased as a precaution during the planning process. A modern design that was beautiful in its own right, but carried none of the emotional significance or family history that had made the vintage dress so precious. As Emma looked at herself in the mirror, wearing the replacement dress, she felt a complex mixture of sadness for what had been lost and determination to create new meaning and memories that couldn't be destroyed by anyone else's jealousy or spite. The remaining preparation time was spent focused on helping Emma regain her emotional equilibrium and preparing for a ceremony that would now carry additional layers of meaning about overcoming adversity and choosing love over conflict. Emma's bridesmaids rallied around her with incredible support, each one taking on extra responsibilities to ensure that every other aspect of the wedding proceeded flawlessly, while also processing their own shock and anger about Sophia's betrayal of trust and family bonds. The makeup artist worked carefully to repair Emma's appearance after the tears and stress of the mourning crisis, while the hairstylist made adjustments to ensure that Emma's styling would complement the different neckline and design elements of the backup dress. Sophia, meanwhile, had been relegated to attending the ceremony as a regular guest rather than participating as maid of honor, with Emma's cousin Isabella stepping in to fill the role and handle the responsibilities that Sophia had forfeited through her destructive behavior. The family had collectively decided that Sophia's presence would be tolerated at the ceremony out of respect for Emma's wishes, but that her actions had permanently damaged her standing within the family and her relationships with relatives who had witnessed her calculated cruelty and complete lack of remorse for the pain she had caused. The ceremony itself proceeded with unexpected beauty and emotional intensity, as guests who had heard about the morning's drama watched Emma walk down the aisle with a radiance and strength that seemed to have been deepened rather than diminished by the challenges she had overcome. David's reaction when he saw Emma approaching in her replacement dress was one of pure love and admiration, his expression making it clear that her beauty and worth in his eyes had nothing to do with any particular garment or family tradition, but everything to do with the character and spirit that made her the woman he wanted to spend his life loving and supporting. The wedding vows that Emma and David exchanged carried additional meaning in light of the morning's events, as both bride and groom spoke about their commitment to protecting and supporting each other through whatever challenges and betrayals might come from any source, including family members who might not have their best interests at heart. Emma's vows included a subtle but powerful reference to choosing love over bitterness, forgiveness over revenge, and the creation of new traditions over mourning for what had been lost, words that brought many guests to tears as they understood the deeper context and recent pain that had informed her promises. The reception began with the usual celebration and joy that characterized Emma and David's social circle, as friends and family members who hadn't witnessed the morning drama enjoyed themselves without awareness of the complex emotional undercurrents that were affecting some of the family dynamics. Sophia attended the reception but remained largely isolated from the main celebration, with most family members maintaining polite but distant interactions that made it clear her behavior had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate crisis she had created. But as the evening progressed, the universe began to deliver its own form of justice in ways that none of the family members could have anticipated or planned, starting with a series of social media disasters that would ultimately prove far more devastating to Sophia than her destruction of the dress had been to Emma. Sophia's decision to live stream and document the morning's drama for her social media followers had included captions and commentary that revealed her role in creating the crisis, and her audience had responded with overwhelmingly negative feedback about her behavior and character that began to damage her carefully cultivated online reputation and influence. The viral nature of social media, meant that Sophia's documentation of her own cruelty spread far beyond her immediate follower base, reaching family, friends, professional contacts, and potential business partners who began to see Sophia as someone whose character flaws made her unsuitable for collaboration or association. The comments section of her posts filled with criticism from strangers who expressed disgust at her treatment of her sister and her willingness to destroy family heirlooms for the sake of attention and content creation, while former followers began unfollowing her accounts in large numbers as they lost respect for her values and behavior. My beautiful friends, I need to pause here because what happens next to Sophia is so perfectly timed and dramatically satisfying that you might think I'm making it up. But karma really does work in mysterious ways when someone has crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever dealt with family betrayal or sibling jealousy, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell because your support means everything to me. I also want to hear from you in the comments about your own experiences with family drama and how you've handled situations where someone you trusted betrayed that trust. What other family stories would you like me to share? Your suggestions and engagement help me know what content matters most to this incredible community we're building together. Trust me, what happens to Sophia in the next part of this story will leave you absolutely speechless about how quickly karma can work when someone truly deserves what's coming to them. The first major consequence of Sophia's social media documentation of her own destructive behavior came within hours of the wedding ceremony, when her primary sponsorship partner, a luxury fashion brand that had been paying her substantial monthly fees to promote their products, sent an immediate termination notice after their social media team discovered the viral posts showing Sophia deliberately destroying a family wedding dress. The brand's message was clear and devastating, explaining that Sophia's behavior was completely incompatible with their company values and that they could not associate their luxury products with someone who would deliberately damage precious family heirlooms for the sake of social media content and attention. Sophia's professional world began to collapse with stunning speed as other brand partnerships and collaboration agreements were terminated throughout the evening, with companies citing the negative publicity and character concerns that her documented behavior had raised about her suitability as a brand representative. The influencer economy that Sophia had worked years to build was dismantled in a matter of hours, as businesses realized that association with her had become a liability that could damage their own reputations with consumers who valued family loyalty and basic human decency. But the social media backlash was only the beginning of the consequences that would transform Sophia's life over the following weeks and months, as her documentation of the dress destruction had captured evidence that would have far-reaching legal and financial implications. Emma's mother, Carmen, had immediately contacted their insurance company about the destruction of the vintage dress, which had been appraised at a value of over $15,000 due to its age, craftsmanship, and family provenance. And the insurance investigation quickly identified Sophia as the responsible party based on her own social media posts and the witness testimony of family members. The insurance companies demand that Sophia compensate them for the full appraised value of the dress created an immediate financial crisis for someone whose income had been entirely dependent on the social media partnerships that were rapidly disappearing due to her viral reputation for family betrayal and destructive behavior. Sophia's attempts to claim that the destruction had been accidental were undermined by her own documented confession and the clear evidence of premeditation that emerged from her online activity in the weeks leading up to the wedding. The legal complications extended beyond the insurance claim as Carmen decided to pursue additional civil action against Sophia for the destruction of irreplaceable family property that held emotional and historical value far beyond its monetary appraisal. The lawsuit sought damages not only for the loss of the dress itself, but also for the emotional distress caused to multiple family members who had been devastated by the destruction of a cherished family heirloom that connected them to their ancestors and family history. Sophia's attempts to defend herself in court were hampered by the extensive documentation she had created of her own malicious intent, including social media posts that showed her researching vintage dress construction and expressing resentment about Emma's upcoming wedding in the weeks before the ceremony. The legal proceedings revealed a pattern of calculated planning that made it impossible for Sophia to maintain her claims of accidental damage, while also exposing her to additional charges related to her deliberate documentation and monetization of family trauma for social media profit. The financial pressure from legal fees, insurance claims, and lost income forced Sophia to liquidate many of her personal possessions and move from her expensive apartment to much more modest accommodations that reflected her dramatically reduced circumstances. The designer clothes, luxury accessories, and lifestyle products that had formed the basis of her social media content were sold to cover her mounting expenses, effectively eliminating the material foundation that had supported her online persona and influence. Meanwhile, Emma and David's honeymoon period was marked by an outpouring of support from friends, family members, and even strangers who had been moved by Emma's grace under pressure and her decision to focus on love and commitment rather than revenge and bitterness. The contrast between Emma's dignified response to betrayal and Sophia's self-destructive documentation of her own cruelty became a viral lesson about character, resilience, and the way that authentic goodness ultimately triumphs over jealousy and spite. The extended family's reaction to Sophia's behavior created lasting changes in family dynamics that would affect holiday gatherings, family celebrations, and important milestones for years to come. Sophia found herself excluded from family events not through any official decision, but through the natural consequences of having violated trust and damaged relationships that had taken decades to build and could not be easily repaired through apologies or explanations. Emma's decision to focus on building her new marriage and creating positive memories rather than dwelling on her sister's betrayal became an inspiration to family members who had struggled with their own feelings of anger and disappointment about Sophia's behavior. Emma's example of choosing healing over hatred and growth over grudges demonstrated a maturity and wisdom that strengthened her relationships with relatives who had witnessed her grace under impossible circumstances. The destroyed wedding dress, meanwhile, became the catalyst for a new family tradition as Carmen and several other skilled seamstresses worked together to create a memorial quilt that incorporated salvageable pieces of lace and beadwork from the damaged gown. This collaborative project brought together family members from multiple generations who shared stories about the dress's history, while creating something beautiful from the remnants of what Sophia had tried to destroy completely. The quilt project became a symbol of the family's resilience and their ability to transform tragedy into beauty, creating new traditions that honored their heritage while also acknowledging that material objects, no matter how precious, could never be more important than the relationships and values that truly define their family identity. The finished quilt was presented to Emma and David as a first anniversary gift, representing the family's commitment to supporting their marriage and celebrating their love despite the challenges and betrayals that had marked their wedding day. The ripple effects of Sophia's actions continued to unfold throughout the months following the wedding, as her reputation within their broader community suffered permanent damage that extended far beyond the immediate family circle and social media consequences. Emma and David's friends, colleagues, and professional associates who had attended the wedding or heard about the incident began to view Sophia as someone whose character flaws made her unsuitable for inclusion in social gatherings, business networking events, and community activities where trustworthiness and basic human decency were valued and expected. Sophia's former clients and professional contacts in the fashion and lifestyle industries began to distance themselves from any association with her, not only because of the negative publicity, but also because her behavior had revealed personality traits and values that made her unreliable and potentially damaging to work with on future projects. The influencer and content creation world, which had once seemed like Sophia's pathway to success and independence, became hostile territory where her reputation preceded her and made it nearly impossible to rebuild the career and income source that she had destroyed through her own choices. The psychological impact of becoming a social pariah began to take its toll on Sophia's mental health and self-perception, as she struggled to understand how a single act of jealous spite had led to such comprehensive consequences across every aspect of her life. The isolation and financial stress created a downward spiral that affected her physical health, her ability to maintain relationships with the few friends who hadn't abandoned her, and her capacity to envision a positive future that might emerge from the wreckage of her former life. Emma, meanwhile, continued to thrive in her marriage and career, with the challenges of her wedding day ultimately strengthening her relationship with David and deepening her appreciation for the people in her life who had demonstrated genuine love and support during her moment of crisis. The experience had taught Emma valuable lessons about the importance of surrounding herself with people whose character aligned with her values, while also reinforcing her belief in the power of forgiveness and grace to transform difficult situations into opportunities for growth and wisdom. The teaching position that Emma had worked so hard to establish became even more meaningful to her as she began incorporating lessons about character, resilience, and healthy conflict resolution into her classroom activities and student interactions. Emma's students, many of whom came from families dealing with their own challenges and betrayals, found inspiration in their teacher's example of handling adversity with dignity and strength while maintaining her capacity for kindness and compassion. Even toward those who had hurt her deeply. David's family, who had witnessed the wedding day drama and Emma's remarkable response to it, developed deep respect and admiration for the woman their son had chosen to marry. Recognizing that her character had been tested under the most difficult circumstances and had emerged even stronger and more admirable. The incident had actually strengthened Emma's relationships with her in-laws, who saw her grace under pressure as evidence of the kind of person they wanted as part of their family, and as a role model for their own children and grandchildren. The anniversary of the wedding approached with complex emotions for all the family members who had been affected by Sophia's betrayal. But Emma chose to focus on celebrating the year of marriage and growth that she and David had built together, rather than dwelling on the painful memories of their wedding day. The decision to emphasize positive progress over past trauma became another example of Emma's commitment to choosing healing and hope over bitterness and resentment. Sophia's attempts to reconcile with the family and repair the relationships she had damaged were met with polite but firm boundaries from relatives who had lost trust in her ability to participate in family events without creating drama or causing harm to others. The extended family had collectively decided that Sophia's presence at gatherings created too much stress and potential for conflict, particularly given her continued refusal to take full responsibility for her actions or demonstrate genuine remorse for the pain she had caused. The legal proceedings continued to drain Sophia's resources and emotional energy as the civil lawsuit progressed through the court system, with each hearing and deposition serving as a reminder of the moment when her jealousy and spite had led her to make choices that would affect the rest of her life. The testimony from family members who had witnessed her behavior provided a detailed record of her calculated cruelty that made it impossible for her to maintain any pretense of innocence or accidental harm. Sophia's social media accounts, which had once been her source of income and identity, became monuments to her own downfall, as the posts documenting her destruction of the wedding dress remained online as permanent evidence of her character and values. Her follower count continued to decline as people discovered the viral story and chose not to associate themselves with someone whose behavior represented everything they found distasteful about social media culture and influencer narcissism. The contrast between Emma's rising reputation as a teacher, wife, and community member, and Sophia's declining status as someone who had destroyed family relationships for social media content became a cautionary tale that spread throughout their community and professional networks. People began using Sophia's story as an example of how social media obsession and jealousy could lead someone to make choices that would destroy their own life while failing to achieve any of their intended goals. Emma's decision to create new traditions and memories rather than mourning what had been lost began to inspire other family members who were dealing with their own challenges and betrayals in personal relationships. The family quilt project that had emerged from the destroyed dress became a symbol of resilience and transformation that other relatives began to reference when facing their own difficulties with forgiveness, healing, and moving forward from painful experiences. The second anniversary of the wedding arrived with Emma and David stronger than ever, their marriage having been forged in the crucible of family betrayal and tested by challenges that had ultimately revealed the depth of their commitment to each other and their shared values. Emma had established herself as one of the most respected teachers in her school district, known not only for her academic excellence, but also for her ability to help students navigate family conflicts and personal challenges with grace and wisdom drawn from her own experiences with betrayal and forgiveness. Sophia's life, meanwhile, had continued its downward trajectory as the legal and financial consequences of her actions compounded over time, creating a cycle of stress and instability that affected every aspect of her existence. The civil lawsuit had resulted in a judgment that required her to pay substantial damages to the family for the destruction of the heirloom dress, an amount that would take years to repay given her severely limited income and damaged professional reputation. The apartment that Sophia had been forced to move into after losing her influencer income was a stark contrast to the luxury lifestyle she had once documented for her social media followers, with basic furnishings and cramped living conditions that reflected her dramatically reduced circumstances. The designer clothes and expensive accessories that had once filled her social media content had been sold to cover legal fees and living expenses, leaving her with a wardrobe of discount store items that bore no resemblance to the fashion-forward image she had spent years cultivating. Sophia's attempts to rebuild her social media presence under different usernames and profiles were unsuccessful, as her story had become too well known within the influencer community for her to establish credibility or attract brand partnerships with companies that valued reputation and character. The internet's long memory meant that potential collaborators could easily discover her history of family betrayal and destructive behavior, making her essentially unemployable within the industry that had once provided her income and identity. The isolation that resulted from Sophia's damaged relationships extended beyond her family to include former friends and social connections who had distanced themselves from someone whose behavior had revealed such fundamental character flaws and moral blindness. Sophia found herself spending most of her time alone, without the social validation and attention that had once provided her sense of worth and identity, struggling to find meaning or purpose in a life that had been built entirely around external approval and material success. The mental health challenges that emerged from Sophia's isolation and financial stress began to manifest in ways that concerned even the family members who had been most angry about her destructive behavior. Sophia's few remaining friends reported that she had become increasingly withdrawn and depressed, spending days at a time without leaving her apartment or engaging in any productive activities, caught in a cycle of regret and self-pity that prevented her from taking constructive steps toward rebuilding her life. Emma, despite everything Sophia had done to hurt her, began to feel conflicted about her sister's deteriorating condition and the role that the family's collective rejection might be playing in Sophia's downward spiral. The teacher in Emma recognized signs of someone who was struggling with mental health issues that went beyond the immediate consequences of poor choices, and she began to wonder whether compassion and intervention might be more helpful than continued punishment and isolation. The question of whether to extend forgiveness and support to Sophia created new tensions within the extended family, as different relatives had varying opinions about the appropriate response to someone who had shown such calculated cruelty, but was now clearly suffering from the consequences of her actions. Some family members felt that Sophia's current struggles were simply the natural result of choices she had made freely, while others worried that their collective rejection was contributing to a mental health crisis that could have tragic consequences. Emma's internal struggle between justice and mercy intensified as she learned more about Sophia's current living conditions and psychological state, forcing her to confront difficult questions about the limits of forgiveness and the responsibility that family members have toward each other even after serious betrayals and violations of trust. The situation challenged Emma's deeply held beliefs about redemption, second chances, and the possibility of genuine change and growth in people who had caused significant harm. The turning point in Emma's internal struggle came when she received a call from Sophia's landlord, who had discovered Sophia in a state of severe depression and dehydration after she had failed to respond to repeated attempts at contact regarding overdue rent payments. The landlord, who had learned about the family situation through local gossip and news coverage of the legal proceedings, felt obligated to contact Emma as Sophia's emergency contact, rather than simply proceeding with eviction procedures that would leave Sophia homeless and without family support. Emma's decision to respond to this crisis by visiting Sophia's apartment revealed the extent to which her sister's life had deteriorated since the wedding day incident, with living conditions that suggested someone who had lost the ability to care for herself or maintain basic standards of health and hygiene. Sophia's apartment was cluttered with unpaid bills, empty food containers, and evidence of days spent in bed without any attempt to address the mounting problems that surrounded her. The conversation between the sisters was painful and difficult, with Sophia initially expressing anger and resentment about what she perceived as Emma's role in her social and financial downfall, while also acknowledging for the first time the magnitude of pain and destruction that her actions had caused to the entire family. Sophia's mental state fluctuated between defiance and despair as she struggled to accept responsibility for her choices while also grappling with the overwhelming consequences that had resulted from a single act of jealous spite. Emma found herself in the unexpected position of having to choose between her legitimate anger about Sophia's betrayal and her growing concern about Sophia's safety and mental health. Recognizing that her sister's current condition represented a genuine crisis that required intervention regardless of past grievances and unresolved conflicts. The decision to help Sophia access mental health resources and basic necessities was not about forgiveness or reconciliation, but about preventing a tragedy that would affect the entire family and create additional trauma for everyone involved. The process of getting Sophia connected with appropriate mental health services and social support programs revealed the extent to which the consequences of her actions had created systemic problems that affected her ability to access help and rebuild her life. Sophia's damaged reputation and financial problems had created barriers to employment and housing that would be difficult to overcome, even with professional support and family assistance. Emma's involvement in Sophia's crisis intervention created new dynamics within the extended family, as relatives struggled to understand whether Emma's compassionate response represented healthy forgiveness or enabling behavior that might prevent Sophia from fully experiencing the consequences of her destructive choices. The family members who had been most supportive of Emma throughout the wedding dress incident found themselves questioning whether helping Sophia might send the wrong message about accountability and appropriate consequences for serious betrayals. The conversations between Emma and David about how to handle Sophia's crisis tested their marriage in ways that the original wedding day drama had not, as they navigated different perspectives about family loyalty, personal boundaries, and the appropriate response to someone who had deliberately tried to harm their relationship and happiness. David's initial resistance to any involvement with Sophia was based on his protective instincts toward Emma and his concern that Sophia's crisis might be manipulation designed to restore her access to family resources and attention. Emma's decision to establish clear boundaries around her assistance to Sophia reflected her growth and wisdom since the wedding day incident, as she committed to helping with immediate safety and mental health needs while maintaining firm limits about the kind of relationship and level of trust that would be possible between them in the future. The boundaries included Sophia's requirement to participate in therapy, take responsibility for making financial restitution for the damaged dress, and demonstrate genuine behavioral changes before any consideration of restored family relationships. The therapy process that Sophia entered as a condition of Emma's support began to reveal deeper psychological issues and family dynamics that had contributed to her destructive behavior, including long-standing insecurities, identity problems, and an unhealthy relationship with social media and external validation. The therapeutic work helped Sophia begin to understand the difference between explaining her behavior and excusing it, while also developing healthier coping strategies for dealing with jealousy, competition, and family relationships. Emma's experience of watching Sophia struggle with mental health challenges while still maintaining appropriate boundaries became a powerful lesson in the complexity of forgiveness, family relationships, and personal growth that she began to share with her students and colleagues who were dealing with their own family conflicts and betrayals. Emma's ability to separate her sister's human worth from her destructive behavior provided a model for healthy relationship management that inspired others in similar situations. The extended family's response to Emma's intervention with Sophia varied widely, with some relatives expressing admiration for Emma's compassion and wisdom, while others worried that Sophia was receiving rescue and support that she hadn't earned through genuine remorse and behavior change. The different perspectives created ongoing family discussions about justice, mercy, and the appropriate response to family members who had violated trust and caused significant harm. Sophia's slow progress in therapy and her gradual acceptance of responsibility for her actions began to create possibilities for limited reconciliation with some family members, though the process was complicated by the deep hurt and broken trust that would require years to heal completely. The family members, who were willing to consider eventual forgiveness, required evidence of sustained behavioral change and genuine efforts to make amends, rather than simply expressions of regret and apology. The anniversary of the dress destruction became an opportunity for reflection and assessment of the progress that had been made by all family members in processing the trauma and moving toward healing, with Emma and David choosing to focus on their continued growth as a couple, while also acknowledging the ongoing complexity of Sophia's rehabilitation and the family's healing process. The third year following the wedding dress incident brought significant developments in both Emma's life and Sophia's gradual rehabilitation, as the passage of time allowed for deeper healing and more nuanced understanding of the complex factors that had contributed to the family crisis and its aftermath. Emma and David celebrated their third wedding anniversary with a renewal ceremony that honored both their original commitment and their growth through adversity, creating new memories and traditions that reflected their maturity and strengthened bond. Emma's career had flourished during this period, with her reputation as an educator and mentor expanding beyond her immediate school district to include speaking engagements and professional development workshops where she shared insights about conflict resolution, family dynamics, and personal resilience drawn from her own experiences. Her ability to transform personal trauma into wisdom that could help others facing similar challenges had become one of her greatest professional and personal achievements. Sophia's progress in therapy had been slow but genuine, with her gradual acceptance of responsibility for her actions, accompanied by sustained efforts to address the underlying psychological issues that had contributed to her destructive behavior. The therapeutic process had helped Sophia develop insight into her patterns of jealousy, competition, and attention-seeking, while also building healthier coping strategies for dealing with difficult emotions and family relationships. The financial restitution that Sophia was making to the family for the destroyed dress had become a monthly reminder of her commitment to accountability and repair, even though the payments would continue for several more years, given her limited income and ongoing financial challenges. Sophia's insistence on making these payments despite her difficult circumstances had been one of the factors that convinced some family members that her efforts at rehabilitation were genuine rather than manipulative. Sophia's employment situation had gradually improved as she found work in retail and customer service positions that didn't require the kind of social media presence or personal reputation that had made her unemployable in the fashion and lifestyle industries. The work was humbling and financially challenging, but it provided Sophia with structure, purpose, and the opportunity to rebuild her sense of self-worth through honest effort rather than external validation and attention. The relationship between Emma and Sophia remained carefully bounded and limited, with occasional supervised visits and family therapy sessions that allowed them to process their shared history while maintaining appropriate protection for Emma's emotional well-being and family stability. Emma's willingness to participate in this limited reconciliation process had been conditional on Sophia's sustained commitment to therapy, accountability, and behavioral change over an extended period of time. David's initial resistance to any involvement with Sophia had evolved into cautious acceptance of Emma's approach, as he witnessed Sophia's genuine efforts at rehabilitation and recognized that his wife's capacity for compassion and forgiveness was one of the qualities that had made him fall in love with her in the first place. David's protective instincts remained strong, but he had learned to trust Emma's judgment about the appropriate pace and boundaries for any potential reconciliation with her sister. The extended family's response to Sophia's rehabilitation efforts had gradually shifted from unanimous rejection to a more complex mixture of cautious hope, continued wariness, and recognition that healing from serious betrayals required time, patience, and careful attention to both justice and mercy. Some family members remained convinced that Sophia's efforts were insufficient to warrant forgiveness, while others began to see possibilities for eventual restoration of limited family relationships. The legal proceedings that had resulted from the dress destruction had finally concluded with Sophia's completion of the court-ordered restitution payments and community service requirements, officially closing the legal chapter of the incident while leaving the emotional and relational healing process to continue at its own pace. The conclusion of the legal matters had removed one source of ongoing stress and conflict, allowing the family to focus on the deeper work of rebuilding trust and understanding. Emma's decision to write about her experiences with family betrayal and forgiveness had resulted in a blog and eventual book that reached thousands of readers dealing with similar challenges in their own families and relationships. Her writing provided a framework for understanding the difference between healthy forgiveness and enabling behavior, while also offering hope for people who were struggling to navigate complex family dynamics after serious betrayals and violations of trust. The memorial quilt created from the salvaged pieces of the destroyed wedding dress had become a centerpiece in Emma and David's home, serving as a daily reminder of their family's resilience and ability to create beauty from tragedy. The quilt had also inspired other family members to document and preserve their own family history and traditions in ways that honored the past, while also creating space for new traditions and memories. Sophia's participation in community service programs had unexpectedly connected her with other people who had made serious mistakes and were working to rebuild their lives and relationships, providing her with perspective on her own situation and inspiration for continued growth and change. The community service work had also given Sophia opportunities to contribute positively to other people's lives, helping to restore her sense of purpose and self-worth through service rather than self-promotion. The question of whether Sophia would ever be fully welcomed back into family celebrations and traditions remained open and complex, with different family members holding varying opinions about the appropriate timeline and conditions for complete reconciliation. Emma's position was that reconciliation should be possible eventually, but only after sustained evidence of genuine change and continued commitment to accountability and repair over a period of years rather than months. Watching families navigate these incredibly complex situations always makes me think about how thin the line can be between justice and mercy, between protecting ourselves and allowing space for redemption. Have you ever had to decide whether to forgive someone who betrayed you deeply? How do you balance accountability with compassion when someone you love has hurt you deliberately? These questions don't have easy answers, and Emma's journey shows us that healing from family betrayal is a process that takes years, not weeks or months. 5 years after the wedding dress incident, Emma and David welcomed their first child, a daughter they named Isabella, in honor of Emma's grandmother who had worn the destroyed dress in 1965, creating a new chapter in their family story that honored the past while embracing the future with hope and joy. The birth of Isabella brought unexpected healing to the extended family, as even relatives who had maintained the strongest positions against Sophia found themselves softened by the presence of a new generation and the possibilities for renewal that a baby represents. Sophia's response to becoming an aunt was carefully observed by family members who were curious to see whether this milestone would trigger any regression into jealousy or attention-seeking behavior. But her reaction was characterized by genuine joy and appropriate boundaries that reflected her continued growth and commitment to healthy family relationships. Sophia's gift to her new niece was a handmade baby blanket that she had learned to create during her community service work, representing her desire to contribute something positive and meaningful to the family rather than seeking attention or validation. Emma's decision to allow Sophia limited, supervised visits with baby Isabella marked a significant milestone in the long process of family healing, representing Emma's assessment that Sophia had demonstrated sufficient growth and stability to be trusted with carefully bounded involvement in the next generation's life. The visits were structured and brief, but they provided opportunities for Sophia to experience the joy of family connection, while also demonstrating her commitment to respecting the boundaries and conditions that Emma had established. The contrast between Sophia's current behavior and her actions 5 years earlier was striking to family members who had witnessed both periods, as her interaction with baby Isabella was characterized by selflessness, genuine interest in the child's well-being, and complete absence of the narcissistic attention-seeking that had defined her previous approach to family events and celebrations. Sophia's transformation was not complete or perfect, but it was substantial enough to begin rebuilding trust with some family members who had previously written her off entirely. Emma's experience of motherhood deepened her understanding of the complexities of family relationships and the ways that love, protection, and forgiveness must be balanced when dealing with people who have the potential to cause harm to those we cherish most. Her protective instincts toward Isabella were fierce and unwavering, but they coexisted with her continued belief in the possibility of redemption and change for people who were willing to do the difficult work of genuine transformation. David's role as a father had strengthened his appreciation for Emma's capacity for both fierce protection and generous forgiveness, as he witnessed her navigate the challenges of maintaining family relationships while also safeguarding their daughter's emotional and physical well-being. His trust in Emma's judgment about Sophia had grown over the years as he observed Sophia's consistent efforts at rehabilitation and Emma's wisdom in maintaining appropriate boundaries throughout the process. The annual family gatherings that had been sources of tension and conflict in the years immediately following the wedding dress incident had gradually evolved into more peaceful celebrations that accommodated the reality of ongoing family complexity, while also creating space for healing and connection. Sophia's participation in these gatherings remained limited and conditional, but her presence was no longer a source of active conflict or stress for other family members. Emma's book about family betrayal and forgiveness had been published to positive reviews and meaningful impact, with readers sharing stories about how her framework for healthy forgiveness had helped them navigate their own family crises and relationship challenges. The book's success had provided Emma with a platform for speaking and teaching that extended her influence beyond her immediate community while also creating additional income for her growing family. Sophia's journey toward rebuilding her life had included returning to school to pursue training in social work, a career path that would allow her to use her experiences with mental health challenges and family conflict to help other people facing similar struggles. The choice represented Sophia's commitment to transforming her painful experiences into opportunities for service and contribution rather than sources of ongoing self-pity or resentment. The wedding dress itself, or rather its memory and legacy, had been transformed from a symbol of loss and betrayal into a representation of resilience and the power of love to overcome even the most devastating family conflicts. The story of its destruction and the family's response had become part of their shared narrative, but no longer dominated their relationships or defined their possibilities for future connection and growth. Emma's approach to telling Isabella about her family history as she grew older would emphasize both the importance of accountability and consequences for harmful behavior, while also demonstrating the possibility of redemption and second chances for people who were willing to do the difficult work of genuine change. The goal was to raise Isabella with both strong boundaries and generous compassion, equipping her to handle family complexity with wisdom and grace. The question of whether Sophia would ever be fully restored to her original place in the family remained open, but it was no longer the central focus of family dynamics or a source of ongoing conflict and tension. The family had learned to live with complexity and ambiguity while still maintaining their values and protecting their emotional well-being, creating a model of healthy family functioning that acknowledged both the reality of serious betrayal and the possibility of eventual healing. As Emma looked toward the future with her husband and daughter, she felt grateful for the painful lessons that had taught her the difference between cheap forgiveness that enabled continued harm and expensive forgiveness that required accountability and change. The journey had been longer and more difficult than she could have imagined on her wedding day, but it had ultimately strengthened her character, her marriage, and her family's capacity for both justice and mercy in their relationships with each other. The story of the destroyed wedding dress had become a testament to the truth that while some things cannot be repaired or replaced, the human capacity for growth, healing, and transformation can create new beauty from even the most devastating losses, as long as we remain committed to both protecting what matters most and believing in the possibility of redemption for those who truly seek it. Thank you for staying with me through Emma's incredible journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and eventual healing. Her story reminds us that while family relationships can be the source of our deepest pain, they can also teach us our most important lessons about forgiveness, boundaries, and the strength we never knew we had until we needed it most. If this story has touched your heart or reminded you of your own experiences with family drama and the long road to healing, please stay connected with our community by clicking on one of the videos appearing on your screen right now to continue exploring these powerful themes of resilience, redemption, and the complex beauty of human relationships.